about 2.5, 3 years ago, I had a situation where the day before I had rollerbladed for 20 miles. And then the next day I was helping a friend of mine wire some stuff underneath his house, and he couldn't get down there. So I was down there doing some wiring for him, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to feed you when you get done." And I said, "Hey, can I invite some friends over?" And they said, "Sure, bring your friends over." So we had a party over there, and we had cleared the table off, so I had taken dishes in the kitchen. They said, "Okay, go sit down. It's dessert time." Of course, that gets me to the table real quick when you say it's dessert time. So I went and sat back down. They handed me a plate of blueberry pie, and I couldn't move my arm to take the blueberry pie. And I had just cleared the table off. So it was like a light switch. I couldn't move my whole left side. Of course, the first thought is always having a stroke. Anyway, they called the ambulance. They got me down to the hospital. They said, "You got high blood pressure. You can't move your side. You're having a stroke." So they do the CAT scan, they do the MRI, they do all that stuff. And they're like, "Wow, we didn't find what we thought we were going to find." And so I'm like, "Okay, well, just tell me what's going on so I can, get back to my rollerblading and my house flipping and all that stuff." And they said, "Oh no, you're not going to be walking anytime soon." Anyway, they never are able to tell me what's wrong. And so they send me off on 5 medications, and they say, "It's working. Your blood pressure's okay. Just keep taking your medication. You'll be fine." Well, I didn't really get a whole lot better after the initial 3 months of not being able to move at all. I was able to get up and move around in a wheelchair and with one of those 4-point canes. And I just wasn't happy with what I was being told. So I started calling doctors, and I started asking for Dr. House. I need to talk to Dr. House so we can figure this out. And after about 2 months of calling about 25 practices a day, I finally had one that said, Dr. Linda is kind of like Dr. House. So I said, "I need to get an appointment. Can you set one up for me?" We did that. She spent 4.5 hours with me on that day, and she ran all kinds of tests. She asked me all kinds of questions. And she says, "You didn't have a stroke." And I said, "Well, I didn't think I did, but I didn't know." And I said, "So what is it?" And she says, "Well, you've got Lyme disease." And I'm like, whoa. I had Lyme disease for 15 years without a whole lot of symptoms. And I asked her about that. I said, "But, it's been this long time." And she says, "Well, you're active. You're always doing things. You got a good immune system. You eat pretty well. For whatever reason, you were good until you had that major catastrophic closing of the canal where you send out the signal, and you lost it, just bam, like that." And so I said, "Wow." And she did some kind of unusual, let's call it unusual. It wasn't the typical treatment that you would have got if you would have went into most places. It took about 5 months of this treatment, and she ran the test after that, and she says, "You're clean, you're good to go." I said, "Wow." And so we started weaning myself off of the blood pressure medications. And once I got off that blood pressure medications and she got rid of the Lyme, I started noticing I got a little bit better, for about 2 months there. And then I plateaued again, and I wasn't, I had stopped again. And I was like, "Oh, what's going on here?" I thought for sure I'd be kind of, getting better. And it just wasn't getting anywhere. So then I got back into that mode of, okay, I got to find something. And I looked everywhere. I chased everything down. I went after different places. Then a good friend of mine said, "Hey, you might want to think about this." And I said, "Oh, what's that?" And I thought she was talking about a toy because she called it Nerf, whatever. And I thought, "Oh, that's a Nerf gun or something." So I didn't really know exactly what it was. And I said, "Are you sure?" And she goes, "Yeah, look at all these clinical studies." And she had like 26 or 27 clinical studies that she said I could look at. And I was like, wow, maybe there's something to this. It's not just a thing that's out there. And so I tried it. And after about 3.5 weeks, the swelling in my legs went down, which they told me would go away once I got off the high blood pressure medication, but it didn't. But anyway, being on this stuff, my legs got better. And I noticed that I was able to get up and down my stairs better. I had to, the funny thing is I had to get up and get something on my ceiling, and I had to be able to climb up a ladder, and I had never done that. And I was able to go up the ladder and get this this stovepipe that I was trying to do. And I was like, wow, unbelievable. And I was able to carry something in one arm up the stairs where I couldn't do that before. I'd have to like set it down on each stair as I went up. But I was just like, wow, this is incredible. So, and then I did a video not too long ago about being able to not have to wear that leg brace that I've had on for over 2.5 years. And I was just trying to get the boot on that day, which I hadn't been able to do, but I got the boot on and then laced it up and I was able to walk, and I haven't had that brace on since I did that about 10 days ago.